Hi everyone. Today we're going to learn about Matthew chapter 2. We'll explore the people, places, and culture behind the story of Jesus' early life. So in Matthew 2, we're going to talk about King Herod and the wise men and the journey to Egypt. And lastly, God's protection of Jesus. And as you know, understanding the background helps us understand the Bible more deeply. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever followed directions or a map to find something important? Now we have GPS, so when you drive a car, we rely on that device. But in old time, like in the Bible time, the Old Testament or the early New Testament time, they didn't have any of those devices, then I'm sure they had to follow something else, right? And today we're gonna look at that through Magi. All right, so let's get started. When Jesus was born, Herod ruled Judea under the Roman Empire. And he was powerful and famous for building projects, including parts of the Jewish temple. But Herod was also very jealous and cruel. He was insecure about his kingship. So historical records say that he even killed some family members because he feared losing power. And this explains why he felt threatened by Jesus. Now I have a question for you. How would you feel if you thought someone might take your position or a job? I'm sure the answer might be like you will feel nervous or jealous, or maybe you would try to protect your position. An interesting fact is that Herod was called Herod the Great, but many people feared him because of his violence. Now let's talk about the wise men, also called the Magi. They came from the east, and they were educated men who studied stars. That's why they were called scholars and astrologers from the east. But we don't know exactly where they are from, and we just assume that maybe they were from Persia or Babylon. Long ago, many people believed stars could announce the birth of an important king. That's why the wise men followed a special star to find Jesus. And they visited the baby Jesus and showed honor and worship. Do you think the wise man's journey was easy or difficult, and why? Yeah, right. It must have been really, really difficult and dangerous as well, because it was a long journey. And at the time, I'm sure the roads were unsafe as well. And there is an interesting fact. The Bible never says there were exactly 3 wise men. People often think there were 3 because there were 3 gifts. Okay, now let's talk about the gifts of the wise men. As we know, there were 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And each gift has its own meaning. Gold was a gift for kings, so it symbolizes a kingship. And frankincense was used in worship, which symbolizes worship and priesthood. And lastly, myrrh was used as perfume and for burial. When people died, they used it to make it smell maybe good, and it symbolizes suffering and death of Jesus. And these gifts showed honor and respect for Jesus. And the gifts revealed Jesus' identity as a king. Now let's talk about Bethlehem, the important birthplace of Jesus. So Jesus was born in Bethlehem, but there was also King David's hometown as well. And a prophet named Micah had said long before that the Messiah would come from Bethlehem. Matthew shows that Jesus fulfilled this prophecy, which he connects Jesus to Old Testament prophecies. And this showed Jesus was the promised Messiah. And I have a question for you. Why do you think prophecies were important for people in the Bible? Because prophecies showed God's plan, gave people hope, and helped people recognize the Messiah. An interesting fact is that Bethlehem means house of bread in Hebrew. Okay, Jewish expectations of the Messiah. Many Jewish people hoped the Messiah would save them from Roman rule and make Israel strong again, make them to be independent. And because of this, Herod thought Jesus might become a political king, but Jesus came to save people spiritually. What kind of leader do people usually want during difficult times? Yes. We need someone who can protect us, right? And the word Messiah means anointed one or chosen savior. Now let's talk about dreams and divine guidance. In Matthew 2, God spoke through dreams. The wise men were warned in a dream not to return to Herod. Jesus was protected through the dream. And Joseph was also told in a dream to escape to Egypt. Dreams showed God's protection and guidance. Do you think dreams are important in the Bible? Yes, dreams were commonly seen as messages from God in many ancient cultures. And God used dreams to guide people. Also, dreams warned people about danger, or dreams showed God's protection. Now, let's move to Egypt as a place of refuge. Joseph took Mary and Jesus to Egypt to escape from Herod. And Egypt was outside Herod's control and had many Jewish communities. That's why it could be a safer place for the baby Jesus. And Matthew connects this to Old Testament prophecy. How would you feel if you suddenly had to leave your home and move to another country? Suddenly, that's the key word, suddenly, without any preparation. You'd be scared or sad or confused, right? Or nervous. And there's an interesting fact. Egypt had a large Jewish population during the time of Jesus. When Herod realized the wise men were not returning, he ordered young boys in Bethlehem to be killed. This sad event is called the Massacre of the Innocents. that actually reflects Herod's violent character. Matthew connects this event with Jeremiah's prophecy. And this story shows sorrow and suffering as well. What can happen when people let fear and jealousy control them? They hurt others, right? And they make bad decisions or become angry and selfish like Herod. Throughout history, I think we have many events like these, and it's still happening like wars. After Herod died, Jesus' family lived in Nazareth in Galilee, and Nazareth was a small and unimportant town. That's why people often looked down on Galilee. And Jesus came from humble beginnings. Can important people come from small towns or ordinary families? Yes. Actually, great leaders can come from anywhere. And background does not decide a person's future. Main themes of Matthew 2 are, first, Jesus is the promised Messiah. Through prophecies, and God protects and guides his people through dreams, and Jesus fulfills Old Testament prophecies, and salvation is for all nations, like Magi didn't know God, right? They were not Jewish people, but salvation is for all people. People from all nations can worship Jesus. Which lesson from Matthew 2 is most meaningful to you? God's protection, or the fulfillment of prophecy, or the wise man's showing faith, or God's guidance? An interesting fact is that the wise men were foreigners, showing that Jesus came for all people, not only for the Jews. Now we are closing Matthew 2. Today we learned about the historical and cultural background of Matthew 2, and it helps us understand the Bible message better. And I hope you have all these main themes in your mind and live up to those words. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.